Hello, I'm making this video to show you the programming software for the Kirisun S780. In this video I'm going to be going over all the things you can do with the programming software and how you can program the radio. Okay, so we'll start off with the radio information. I'm just going to go down all the items down here one by one. So you got radio information. You have to set the frequency range appropriate for your radio. If you don't know what to set here, you can just read the data off the radio and it will tell you. It will set the correct one there once you read it off the radio. And to read stuff off the radio, go to here, read data or write data. And if that's not working, one simple thing you can do is go to communication port and make sure the right port is selected. Okay, so let's go to general settings. You got your timeout timer, which stops you from transmitting for over 90 seconds, as it's set here. You can set it to less or more than that if you want. Pre-alert time alerts you before you get timed out, basically, and it will tell you basically if you don't stop talking you're going to get timed out in 10 seconds. It'll tell you something like that, although I haven't encountered it so far. I'm not really sure how these ones work, but I'm sure a bit of experimentation will find out easily. Whisper allows you to talk quietly or to whisper into the radio and for it to still pick up your voice. So it probably makes the microphone slightly more sensitive. Maybe it boosts the gain. I don't know exactly how it works, but there's that. Battery saver mode, you can turn it on or off. 1 to 7 is the highest, which will save the most battery, and 1 to 1 saves the least battery. Then you got squelch level. 1 is the lowest, 9 is the highest, and 0 is off. Keypad lock automatically locks the keypad. You can have it off or you can set it to any interval you want there. 30 is the highest, I think. Yeah, okay. Language, English or Chinese only. And then you got keys. PF, I'm not sure what it stands for, but PF is the little orange key below the push to talk button, and a short press compared to a long press. A short press is where you just press the button quickly, and a long press is where you hold it for more than 2 seconds. And I've got it set to monitor for a short press. And monitor, what that does is it turns off the CTCSS or the DCS on receive. So if somebody else is transmitting on the same channel as you, but using a different CTCSS or using no CTCSS, then if you enable monitor, you'll be able to hear them. And squelch on off, just you hold it and it turns off the squelch, so you can listen to weak signals, for example, on analog. Now these functions both don't do anything on digital. There's a lot of options you can set here, and some of them are quite useful. And then you've got back and menu. Back is the red button on the front on the keypad, and menu is the green button on the keypad. So if you hold them, then you can get them to do different functions as well. So let's move on. You got some other options here. Alert tone, you can mute them or unmute them. If you mute them, then it won't do things like beeping when you press a button, beeping when you key up, beeping when you receive messages, that kind of thing. So it's best really to leave it unmuted unless you don't want to hear all those things. Call out tone is it beeps when you press the push to talk button if you have that enabled. Call in tone is when somebody calls you on the radio, it will make a beep or a tone or whatever, depending on the type of call, because different types of calls make different noises. You can turn the low battery alert off, private call tone, group call tone, or all call tone. You can turn them individually off. Message alert you can turn off, and keypad alert is when you press a button for it to turn that off. So LCD display mode is much the same as you have on the radio. I won't go through all these options, they're quite self-explanatory, but it just allows you to choose what is displayed on the screen regarding information about the channel. Backlight, you can have it always on or automatic. Always on would waste an awful lot of battery, so you don't want to do that. You can set the time that it goes off as well. Then you've got menu, and these options here allow you to remove these items from the menu. So if you untick the box, then they can't be changed in the menu. So if you untick scan, for example, the radio user would not be able to scan. Or if you untick language, they will not be able to change the language of the radio. Then you've got channel information. So this is where you program in all your channels. You can have up to 16 banks of channels containing 16 channels each, so that you can easily reach any channel in that bank. Oh, actually they're called zones, not banks. They're called zones. So you can have 16 zones, and you can easily reach any channel in that zone with the channel selector knob, because that's why you're only allowed 16 channels in each zone. Here I've got a zone which I'll show you as an example. You've got the name of the zone. When you choose a zone on the radio, you can't actually choose it by name. You can only choose it by zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. But once you've selected that zone, you can have it display on the screen what zone you're in. So I'll go through all the options that you can set for each channel. You can set analog or digital. You can set the scan list, more on this later. Transmit power, high or low, 5 watts or 1 watt. Channel work mode, you can have it in direct mode, which is simplex, working on the same channel each way. You can have it in repeater mode, which is when you're going through a repeater. Or the other option is repeater / talk around mode. I'm not sure exactly what that one does. You have your channel name here. You can use characters in there as well as numbers. You got your receive and transmit frequencies. They would be different if you're using a repeater. Your channel bandwidth, which for digital is automatically set to 6.25 and you can't change it, but if you set this to analog, you can set it to 12.5 or 25. 25 is wide FM and 12.5 is narrow FM. You got auto scan, which will automatically scan your scan list for you. Your digital options, you've got your group list that you want the radio to be in. That decides what group the radio is in when it's on this channel. Your default transmit contact, I've got it set to all call, so I'll call everyone on the channel, but you can set it to a group. So if I set it to this group, then it will call the group that this radio is in. I'll explain a bit more on this later. Or you can call an individual, so this is a specific radio, but I like to leave it on all call. And you can still go into the contacts menu and call someone from there by highlighting them and then pressing the push to talk. Polite mode just stops you from transmitting on top of other people. Allowed TX allows you to transmit whenever, and channel free stops you from transmitting on top of anyone else. And you've got voice encrypt, where you can select a key. So I've got a key called that, I've got a key called key 1, and then there's no encryption. So this channel is using that key there. If I change this to analog, I'll show you the analog settings. You've got CTCSS and CDCSS, which is actually DCS. I don't know why they called it that, but you can change that, CTCSS, CDCSS, or inverted DCS. And you can also mix them as well. You can have one on CTCSS and one on DCS if you wanted to. And you've got tail reverse, which stops you from hearing the squelch tail on transmissions. If both radios have the same value set, that's how it works. You both have to have the same value here, and it will stop each other's radios from hearing the squelch tails after you stop talking. And this one does the same as polite mode. It stops you from transmitting on top of other people. So to move through the channels, you just go through here and you can click add. You can remove a channel easily like that. To move through the zones, you go like this. So I've got all the 446 PMR 446 channels here in digital. I've got them in analog here. Oh, I don't know why that's on 25 kilohertz. That's not meant to be like that. And you do have the 6.25 kilohertz steps that you need on this radio for 446, like you see here. So you can set up to 16 zones, as I said before, which allows you to have quite a few different kind of things in your radio, and it's a good way of organizing the channels. So next you've got scan information, and these are your scan lists. On the left it will show all the channels that you can put there, and on the right it will show all the channels that are in that scan list. So I've got scan list digital, and it will scan these channels here. It shows the zone on the left, and then it shows the channel number on the right. So it will scan all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to 8. I haven't put these two in there. So if I'm on any of these channels that I have set the scan list for digital, even if it's in a different zone, if I set one of these to digital, the scan list to digital like that, it would scan these channels here. So that's how that works. You have to have it set to the scan list that you want to scan, whose channels you want to scan basically. So I've got analog scan list as well, which scans those ones, and so on. I've got all my other scan lists there. So next you've got the digital emergency system, which is, I don't think it's very useful, because it would be better to just call over the radio and say, I've got an emergency, please help me, whatever. Because this just transmits sirens and things over the radio and blocks up the channel, hindering communications really. That's what it does. It's not very helpful in my opinion. But these do different things. You can have the siren only, which will just play a siren noise out of your radio. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but it's a local kind of alarm that might attract the attention of somebody nearby if you were unable to shout for some reason. You got regular with voice, which sends an alarm and then transmits voice as well. You got silent, which just sends an alarm, and then you got silent with voice, which sends an alarm with it will also transmit sending your voice as well. But that's really not of much use. DPMR service, you've got basic settings. The radio ID is like the unique number for the radio. You have to have this set differently for every radio, otherwise things won't work very well, really. So make sure you just set a different one of these for each radio when you're programming them. You got group call hang time and private call hang time. After a call, it will show the group on the screen for 2000 milliseconds, which is 2 seconds. You can set it for longer, and if you set it for longer, let's say you set it to 3 seconds, within 3 seconds of somebody stopping talking and letting go of the push to talk button, you can then get your radio and push the push to talk button, and it'll call back the same group that was calling. And the same with private calls. If someone private calls you, if you set it to 3 seconds, within 3 seconds you can push the push to talk button and private call them back, without going through the menus and finding them, or without keying in their number directly and calling them back again. It just does it for you. You got all these settings here, and turning them off stops the radio from doing those things. You can't turn off make an all call. All radios must be allowed to make an all call. I don't know why. Make a group call, you can turn that off, so people can't call groups. They can only call individuals or private calls. If you turn off radio kill, revive, decode, if another radio tries to kill this radio, then it won't decode it and it won't be killed or revived. You can enable kill and revive, which allows this radio to send out those commands. You can write message, you can enable write message. If you disable that, then the radio cannot send messages to other people. And you can allow it to make new contacts, and you can allow manual dial. Manual dial is from the home screen. If you enter in a number and then push the push to talk button, it will dial that unit or that radio ID. So let's move on and have a look at contacts. You've got your contacts, you've got group calls, individual calls, and all calls. All calls call everyone on the channel. So it'll call all the groups, all the individuals, even if they're not in groups, just everyone. Group calls call only the people in that group. So the way you do this is you make a contact, set it to group call, and you make a group name, and then if you want radios to be called when you call that group, you have to make a group list, put that contact in the group list, and then set the channel to use that group list. So group list 1, if a radio is on this channel, it will be in group list 1, and if you call group 1, it will call any radio using group list 1. It's a bit complicated, but hopefully that makes sense. Then you got individual calls, and it will call this ID here. So my other radio, I'm using number 22 for their ID, and it will call them. The call ID for group calls doesn't really do anything. You don't need to change that. That doesn't do anything at all. So then you've got your quick text. I did the group lists. Oh, there's one more thing actually about group lists. It'll show your contacts available. It'll only show group calls here, and you can add more than one of them to a group list. So let me show you. If I make another contact and call it call 1, that's fine, group call, I can add that to group list 1, and by calling call 1, it'll call group list anyone in group list 1, just the same as calling group 2 will do. So but I don't want to have that, so I'll just remove that contact from there. So then we've got quick text. These are just like text that are already written out for you and save you time in typing things. So they're just like template messages, and to send one you go into messages, template, select the message, any of these. These are ones that I've put in, so they won't come on your radio. You'll have to make up your own ones, but you select one of these, choose who to send it to, and then click send and it'll send it. Then the last thing is voice encrypt. You can have a load of different keys. They're up to 32 characters long, and it's recommended to set all 32 characters to make this most secure key possible. You can use random number generators to just generate a key for you. And the way these work is basically that's your encryption key, and if you give someone else your encryption key, they'll be able to put it in theirs and decode your messages. If you don't give it to someone else and they want to try and listen in to you, they won't be able to hear you at all unless they can miraculously guess this key. But if you have a short one, anyone could easily guess it like that. One thing about encryption though, it only encrypts the voice transmissions of your radio. So if you send someone a message, that won't be encrypted. So if you send them, let's say if you're in a business and you send them some customer details using the message functionality in the text, it won't be encrypted. So anyone who's tuned to your channel and let's say you send the message to an all call, anyone tuned to that channel with one of these radios will be able to pick it up. But if you send it to a group, then they'll only be able to pick it up if they're in that group. Or if you send it to an individual, then they'll have to have their radio's ID set to the same one that you're sending it to. So that's reasonably secure if you send it to an individual, as long as you choose an obscure number for the group, the radio ID I mean. It also doesn't encrypt your ID, your unit ID or your radio ID when you're talking. Somebody else can see when you're talking who is talking. They just can't listen in because they don't have the key. So that's almost everything. I'm just going to show you. You can change your model up here. This video is about the S780, but you can change it to any of these other ones. For example, if you buy the one without the keypad. You can get to the functions from the edit menu instead of going down here. And programming, read data, that's how you read data and that's how you write data. You can make a password to stop people reading and writing from the radio. So if you don't want anyone to be able to read or write your radios, you can put a password in there. And this helps with security as well. If you put a read password on, they'll need the password to be able to read the radio, and if you have an encryption key you don't want anyone getting, then it will stop them from grabbing one of your radios, reading it and finding out the encryption key. So that's quite useful. And in settings or setting, you will need to set the COM port. So make sure you set the correct COM port here. I think that's about everything. So thank you for watching, and I hope this video has been useful.